Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. So I'm going to go over the quarterback and tight end position and highlight a couple players that I've identified as busts ahead of this upcoming season. Split the wide receiver and running back videos up into their own videos. Sort of combined these two just because it's tough to find like 4 or 5 busts at these positions because there just are a lot less players, and it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to tell you like the tight end 15 or something is going to be a bust. So I wanted to make sure that I was picking relevant players, and there's obviously going to be some contradictory or controversial takes here. These are guys that are being drafted relatively highly. They have to be to really qualify as a bust. Because if you draft a guy late and he sucks, then it doesn't really impact your team a whole lot. So if you guys disagree or anything, just let me know in the comments below. These are guys that I think are obviously talented players and there's a path towards success. But they're guys that I find myself fading quite a bit in drafts right now, and they're guys that I just don't really see paying off at their current ADP right now. So let me know what you guys think. If there are any other guys that I didn't mention that you want mentioned, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to give you guys my feedback on that. And it's just always super fun interacting with you guys there. So yeah, should be a lot of fun. And let's just get into it. I won't ramble on too long. So starting off with probably the most controversial of all of them, I'm going to call Joe Burrow a bust upcoming this season here. Obviously, he's one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL. I love watching him play. He was an absolute heater last season, and it was really fun to watch him play. And it's super easy to look at that and say, hey, things are just going to run it right back this season, and there's no reason to be pessimistic or even concerned at all about what Joe Burrow is going to do for us this season. But I actually do have some concerns, and it's not that I think Joe Burrow is going to be a horrendous pick. He's going to be a top 10 quarterback this season, assuming health, and he's clearly going to have a great year. It's just that where he's being drafted right now makes it just feel a little too risky for me. He's currently being drafted as the wide quarterback 4 ahead of Jalen Hurts, right behind guys like Lamar, Josh Allen, and Jaden Daniels. And in my mind, all 4 of those guys just clearly need to be taken ahead of him. They offer such a significantly higher floor just because of the rushing upside that they offer, and gives them a much higher ceiling as well. Even with how well he performed last season, he set career highs in passing yards and passing touchdowns by quite a large margin. It was like 300 more yards than his career high, 9 more passing touchdowns than his career high. He finishes the quarterback 3 right now there. So that's sort of the ceiling that we see for these guys that are being drafted that don't offer any sort of rushing ability. And there's just a very clear path towards regression here. Currently being drafted as his ADP of quarterback 4, he has to put up another MVP caliber season to even pay off at his ADP. And we know that touchdowns are not a sticky stat. Look at last year, we saw Lamar go out there and throw for 41, threw for 24 touchdowns the year before. Joe Burrow could very easily go from 43 touchdowns last year to 30 this year, and it would make him like a fringe top 7 quarterback. And that's a very significant downgrade and makes him a really horrendous draft pick for his being taken. First thing I'll mention here is the defense. I know it was horrendous last season. That's probably going to be bad again this year, but it's really tough to project defense year over year in the NFL. There tends to be a lot of fluctuation, a lot of variation from year to year in terms of how well defenses perform. And if the Bengals defense improves at all, that's actually really bad for Joe Burrow because it just seemed like every single week last season, the Bengals had to go out there and race to 35 points. If the defense could end up being league average, which is at least in the range of outcomes here, it would be a very significant downgrade for what Joe Burrow and everyone in this offense can do because they just won't have to score 35 points every single game. On top of that, we have seen Joe Burrow effectively miss 2 of his 5 seasons in the NFL due to injury. I'm not saying I expect him to get hurt, but that's something we need to consider at least a little bit. Like all the other guys ahead of him, Lamar a little bit has been banged up, but Josh Allen hasn't missed time. Jaden Daniels, I know it's early, but he hasn't really missed time yet. Jalen Hurts hasn't missed time yet. Joe Burrow has probably the highest injury risk of all of those guys, and that's on top of the fact that he just doesn't have the same floor because he doesn't run the ball a lot. So there's just a lot of risk associated with him. Typically, I think it's a good rule of thumb where, every year we have some pocket passer that goes out there and throws for 40-plus touchdowns, puts up a really fantastic fantasy season, and ends up being drafted really high the next year, and it's generally pretty smart to fade those guys. Think about Justin Herbert just a few years ago. It's just, it doesn't mean they're a bad quarterback, doesn't mean they're a bad player. It's just that if you don't get lucky in the touchdown department, which you need to if you're a pocket passer, you end up being like a fringe top 10 quarterback just because you don't have any sort of rushing floor. And that does make it really quickly a bad draft pick if you're taking a guy like this that high. So I like Joe Burrow a lot, but I just can't find myself drafting much of him this season. Next up, we got probably the most obvious bust at the quarterback position for me, and it's going to be Jared Goff. And I just don't really get the ADP. I think it's maybe harsh to call Jared Goff a bust because he's going to be good enough. It'll be like a weekly streaming option, and he'll probably volume his way to being a fringe top 10 guy again. But it's sort of the same way that we've seen guys like Kirk Cousins in the past, Phillip Rivers the years before. They never really were meaningful fantasy contributors. It's just they ended up voluming and being consistent enough that they were fringe top 10 guys. So at the end of the year, you look back and say, hey, Philip Rivers finished at the quarterback 11 and Derek Carr finished at the quarterback 12, like 5 years in a row. Like, that doesn't actually make you a valuable fantasy asset. He's currently being drafted as the quarterback 10 right now, going ahead of guys like Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, Justin Fields, Jordan Love, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, and Trevor Lawrence. All of those guys are guys that I think have significantly higher ceilings than Jared Goff, and they're all guys that I would take ahead of Jared Goff. So even though, I think Jared Goff will finish ahead of some of those guys, when you're drafting a guy, first off, you're drafting Jared Goff in like the 7th round. You're spending like a legitimate draft pick on him. So he's a guy that you're going to feel like you have to start every week, and he's just not that kind of guy. You really want to play him in a matchup that's going to be indoors, in a high-scoring matchup, not in a game where the Lions might just win really handily and just lean on David Montgomery in the running game. For me, he's like a weekly streaming option and not someone that you want to draft and lock in as your starter every single week. And that's what you have to do if you draft him right now. Last season, again, this is another guy that threw for a career high in passing touchdowns. I mentioned earlier with Joe Burrow how that is not a sticky stat. That could easily regress a little bit. Just think about how effectively this team can run the ball. You could certainly see more rushing touchdowns go to both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. You could even see a guy like Jameson Williams run a few in. And you could even see this offense just take a step back as well. They lost Ben Johnson as their offensive coordinator. That's certainly going to be at least a change. We don't know exactly what we're going to see there. We lost Frank Ragnow, their all-pro center. That could certainly negatively impact things as well. So there's just a lot of question marks surrounding the Lions offense here. Again, I still expect the Lions offense to be fantastic this year, but they were like historically great last year. You could easily see a regression just to being a really good offense. That would be really bad for Jared Goff. On top of that, the defense should improve. If you remember looking back just early last season, this defense was actually playing phenomenally. This team was blowing out teams every single week. The defense was shutting opposing offenses down. They just got absolutely obliterated by injuries. Most notably, Aiden Hutchinson got injured after week 4 in the middle of game 5. And if you just look over those first 4 games, I know it's a small sample size, but Jared Goff only averaged 16 points per game. He averaged 20 over the course of the full season. So that's a very significant reduction just because the defense is playing better. The offense didn't have to do a lot. And again, there are more outdoor games for the Lions this season. If you look back to last season, it was a really popular topic to talk about how the Lions only had to play 2 games outside all year. They have to play 7 outside this year. So that's a little bit more. Jared Goff, he's been historically much better indoors than outdoors. So that's just another reason to be a little bit concerned. He'll probably finish as a top 15 guy by the end of the year, but I don't think he's going to be a guy that we're going to be excited about playing every week, and I just can't find myself drafting him very much this year. Next up, we got Travis Kelce as the first tight end I'm going to highlight as a bust, and I just don't really see myself drafting any of him this year. I'm through 20 best ball drafts now. I have 0 shares of Travis Kelce, and I think the main reason is he just feels like an expensive Mark Andrews, a guy that's been great before and has a lot of name value, but probably just needs to get really lucky in the touchdown department and pay off in fantasy. He was the tight end 9 in standard scoring last season, tight end 6 in half PPR scoring, and he's currently being drafted as the tight end 5. So that right there just feels a little bit harsh because he's being drafted higher than he finished last year. There are a lot of reasons to be concerned as well. You've got Rashee Rice back and healthy, Hollywood Brown back and healthy as well. You've got Xavier Worthy going into year 2. There's at least a realistic scenario here where Travis Kelce's the number 4 target on this offense, given he's a year older. If you watched him in the playoffs last year, he did not look like himself. And I think that means that sort of like what we had happen with Mark Andrews last year, you're going to need him to fall in the end zone 10 times to be super relevant for us in fantasy. And that's just not a risk I want to take. I would much rather take a shot on guys that are being drafted much later that I feel like have a lot more upside as well. Guys like Tyler Warren, David Njoku, Evan Ingram, even though like Dalton Kincaid in there. Like, these are guys being drafted several rounds later than him that have a clear path towards finishing ahead of him. And it just makes Travis Kelce feel like a questionable draft pick. I get it. He's got a lot of chemistry with Patrick Mahomes, but he just didn't look like himself. I don't see a world where you end up feeling like you lost your draft, or lost your lead because you didn't take Travis Kelce, because I just don't see him ever returning to form as that top-tier guy. Like, there's no way he cracks into the top 3 this season if all 3 of Bowers, McBride, and Kittle stay healthy. So I'd rather just take a shot on someone more explosive. When you get out of the top-tier tight ends anyway, you're typically looking at guys that just don't matter. Generally streaming the position unless you get really lucky and find a gem there. So I'd rather just pass on Kelce, take a better player where he's being drafted, because you're drafting in like the 6th or 7th round. That's just way too high for me for a guy that I don't think is going to be a reliable weekly starter for us. And the last player we'll mention in this video is going to be the second tight end. It's going to be Jonnu Smith, who his ADP has already fallen quite a bit after the trade from Miami to Pittsburgh, but I just really don't think it's fallen enough. He's fallen down to the tight end 10 by ADP. I don't think he's going to be a reliable weekly starter for us. I feel like he needs to be outside of the top 12 for sure. He is one of 3 tight ends in Pittsburgh they're going to look to utilize heavily. Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington are both legitimate players. Washington, not as much as a receiving threat, but he's a guy that they do want to get on the field quite a bit. So as a team that's probably going to, you're not going to run 3 tight end sets every single play. That's going to limit his playing time just a little bit. The last time we saw him play with Arthur Smith, I know people are super excited, like, oh, Arthur Smith loves force-feeding Jonnu. He's going to be fantastic. Like, the only team that ever force-fed Jonnu was Miami. If you look back last season, that was the first year in which Jonnu Smith actually was heavily utilized in an offense. Go back the year before, he was in Atlanta with Arthur Smith, finished as the tight end 20. So by far from relevant. And honestly, as sad as it might be, Pat Freiermuth is probably more target competition for Jonnu than what Kyle Pitts was offering. So that's sad to say, but like Jonnu Smith probably has more target competition at the tight end position than he did in Atlanta. And on top of that, the Steelers might just be really bad on offense. I know a lot of people really expect Aaron Rodgers to come in here and elevate the offense from last season. I don't know why they really expect that. If you watched the Jets last year, Russell Wilson played better than Aaron Rodgers did last season. I get it. There's maybe a little bit more upside with Rodgers if he can sort of find himself maybe 2 years after the Achilles injury. But as a guy who's already talking about retirement, I don't see Aaron Rodgers as a guy that's going to be super eager and aggressive in terms of coming back and really playing at a high level. So I don't expect this offense to be very good. On top of that, we're going to see significantly less volume, passing volume specifically in this offense. Last year, Miami threw the ball 591 times versus 499 over the course of the season for Pittsburgh. So you're looking at about 100 less total opportunities for Jonnu Smith through the air. Probably less touchdown upside as well. This, again, should be a bad offense that wants to run the ball in when they get close. I feel like at best, Jonnu Smith is going to be a tight end that you can play in the right matchup and not a guy that you're drafting to look to start every single week. And he goes ahead of some really high upside guys like Tyler Warren. I keep mentioning him. I love Tyler Warren this season. I'm going to draft a lot of him. Dalton Kincaid has a lot of upside as well. But even beyond him, I think there are other guys that have more upside that I would just rather wait and take. Because if you're drafting Jonnu here, you're still putting a kind of a premium pick. And he's just not a guy that I think you're going to be happy starting every single week. So that'll do it for all the bust videos here. We'll probably touch these up in a month or so. Obviously, draft spots are going to change. ADPs are going to shift around over the next month or so. Even next 2 months, we'll be getting into draft season. So I'll make sure I refresh all of these videos as well. We're going to get into some mock drafts coming up here soon. I haven't done any on the channel just yet, so I'll get you guys some of those. I'll try and give a nice spread. We'll do some auctions, some standard drafts, a bunch of different team builds and everything, trying to give you guys some good strategy, give you guys some insight into how I draft and everything so I can hopefully help you guys out there. If you guys haven't already, I highly recommend you guys subscribe to the channel. There will continue to be 3 videos a week or more every single week until the start of the regular season. And then once we get there, there's going to be even more than that. I'm going to be here all year long. And if you guys stick around, we're probably going to win some championships together. So it should be a lot of fun. I'm super stoked. We're getting closer to football every single day, and I can't wait. And hopefully you guys can't wait either. So if you made it this far in the video, give it a thumbs up. It helps me out quite a bit. And I'll catch you with the next one, guys. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.